All right, I guess we call to order. Let's do a roll call.
Dan Trombley.
George Harris.
Greg Campbell.
Sandy Butler, Tammy Buck.
Has everybody had a chance to go through the meeting minutes from last time? That's okay. We'll give a couple minutes, I guess. You're looking tropical.
Did you bring all the rain?
I just flew from Hawaii.
Oh, nice. And boy, your arms tired. Yeah.
Just for this meeting. I gotta go back after this.
All done? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right. So, on to old business.
So we have a item that was, I guess, tabled from the last meeting about the conversion of use at 110 West High Street to a coffee shop with a drive-through. And upon further inspection, we kind of just found that this was not exactly the best site for a drive-through, but the coffee shop use would definitely be appropriate. The downtown is supposed to be more towards pedestrian friendly, and the drive-through doesn't exactly fit with that. The building inspector and I also went to the site and walked around and drove around it as well, trying to figure out where cars would queue, where they would enter, exit, and it seems like it would cause some traffic issues. There's also kind of not really a good way to exit. If you look at the kind of map that was made there, map outline page, you can see that you have to go through Perky's parking lot, and I know that they have trucks that offload product there. It's a pretty tight squeeze anyway, and it's just not exactly an ideal spot. There might be some sort of way to wrap the drive-through around the building, but again, that's something that would require more in-depth specs that we just don't have. So we do have some conditions on the COA, but the use is definitely appropriate. We'd love to see the coffee shop come in here. Not enough, but
So the suggestion from you folks is to allow a coffee shop, just not the drive.
yeah. It just doesn't really fit the area, and there's not a lot of room for it. There is some concern as well with the ADA ramp. That's something that could probably easily be remedied. From the drawings we have, it looks like the sidewalk will be expanded. That's something I'm not sure is allowable.
We need more details.
Yeah.
It looks like it runs up kind of against our town sidewalk. But there would be an option to potentially put a sidewalk, an ADA ramp in the back
Yeah.
that would make less of an impact on that front porch, which is a character defining feature of this property. On two other properties in town, the coffee shop and
Yeah.
the old English catering building, we've seen really nice ramps that do not impact the front facade.
There's plans on this coffee shop for a back patio. So that might be an area where the ADA ramp would better suit. But that also typically ADA ramps lead directly to some sort of ADA parking space. So that's something we don't have information on if that would be placed kind of in the back of the building or where that might be. But that's something that, again, we can work on, but it's mostly the drive-through aspect that doesn't really fit this area.
Your thoughts on this?
So what I'm hearing is to the drive-through, there's only room for like, the width of it's for just for one car, so it's gonna hold, would it be blocking? Is that would be the reason?
Yeah, it
Not
is,
to
it would
be
be a
there.
one-way drive-through, so you come off of West High Street there. And it was indicated that would be a one-way. I'm not sure there's room for 2 cars even if someone misread the sign. And then you would exit onto Pendleton Avenue via Perky's parking lot, or loading space, whatever they use that for.
But that was my concern last time, that there would not be room for 2 cars to go down that valley or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
From what I understand, the issue is not whether the other businesses in the area had a problem with that drive-through being there. As they make their deliveries and such.
Yeah.
And you've got, I mean, did you get written approval for that as well?
No, he will not sign anything.
No.
No, he won't sign.
Verbally, he's
He
agreed,
just-
Right.
he said
to
that's
everything. He's
the
agreed to-
signature.
he's agreed to having his parking lot striped, having a one-way sign underneath the pine tree on the grass area as you exit the parking lot to the east on the south side. And so that would, then my observations, which I purchased this piece of property in 17, is that the traffic that goes through this area at this time is no longer the big semis and things. They park on either High Street, offload, and carry everything with carts over to the side of the liquor store, the south side of the liquor store, or they park on Pendleton Avenue either side and come down the side. There's a sidewalk area there on the south side of this building, and that's where they offload. Just, it's been several months since I've seen a truck parked along there. But I can see that the one-way sign could help as far as keeping people from going both directions through that parking lot, which is what happens now. Now, Burby's, when we talked to them, my remembrance is that he said that the bulk of his patrons park on Pendleton Avenue and come in through the front door. And there are people that come off of Pendleton Avenue and park in the parking lot. And there are people that come off of High Street and park in the parking lot. Now, most of them that come off of High Street, all of them I've seen that come off High Street, continue on through that parking lot and out onto Pendleton Avenue. The traffic that comes in off of Pendleton Avenue, I'd say 70% of them continue on out on High Street. But for some reason, some of them turn around and go back out on Pendleton Avenue. So the way Esther and I have planned out the parking stripes that Libby's has agreed to, that we put down in the parking lot, they would be facilitating traffic coming off of High Street and going through that parking lot. Now, question I have at the town of Pendleton here. My understanding is that all the property owners, the Solution 3, Biz, Perky's, and myself are in agreement concerning the drive-through and the one way. If the drive-through is refused and not allowed, do the property owners have the right to go ahead and make this one way?
It's not considered a town street, correct? It's a private parking lot, which could be, if everybody agreed to that, yes, the town has nothing to say about it.
It's not listed as a town.
It is not a public.
It's perfect.
You haven't addressed the question of queuing on High Street. I mean, you're gonna have queues in both directions. I see what Paige does every day. If she's that successful, there'll be 1,000 cars lined up in both directions. You won't be able to go anywhere.
By both directions, what do you mean?
On High Street, make a
On
left
High
turn in, stop traffic. You can make a right turn in, but if you can't turn in, you stop traffic. Now, there's parking on the right-hand side of High Street going west. I don't recall if there is on the other side of High Street or not, but you know, that's for parking permission or.
I think there's one around this. So
So High Street's not one.
no, I meant part of there's one point, there's part.
Oh, okay, 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 all right, got it. Well, still, you can't get through.
And who legally owns that driveway?
On the map that the town has, and I think that's in, maybe in your documents there, the entrance off of High Street is almost all of mine. A little bit of that. If you come off of the Solutions 3 Biz building about 6 feet, that's what they own, and there's 2 or 3 feet of that's grass. And so they technically own 2 or 3 feet of the concrete. And that concrete was poured, Bill Perky did that. And it might have been Bill Owens on the property there at that time. So that was quite a few years ago.
So the driveway is basically half of it belongs to one owner and the other half belongs to you. Correct?
The other half belongs to Perkins.
Yeah, on the backside, yes. Well,
My
I don't see how we
property-
can move forward if it doesn't really belong to them. If there needs to be, the other owner needs to be in here and ask us and approve what we're going to approve or not approve. I don't see how we can make a decision on somebody else's property that's not listed and it's not present. If that's my concern, I don't know. I guess that would be a grand question.
I'm asking it right now. The queuing in the town right of way, Kevin, like you said, is a concern. You know, we expect us to be really successful at business. Yeah, and that is a fear is that High Street will see a lot of traffic that kind of is a backing up right there. So downtown business zoning being pedestrian oriented, we're a little concerned about another drive-through. So that was another thought we had.
For walk-in customers who park on the street or where?
Yes. So on the queuing, with a vehicle sitting at the drive-up window proposed location, there would be 2 other vehicles behind it, and then there could be another one sitting on the street heading into the space. The question about the sidewalk and the little grass medium and the curb are interesting because the property line is in the street.
Yeah, that's common.
And so my property line, I own a fire hydrant, I own a sidewalk, I own a curb, and I own the grass strip in between the sidewalk and the curb. That continues on down the street. And at Solutions 3 Biz, I believe the property line does cross onto the curb. And I'm not sure where it is when it gets to the corner of the road. So that's a consideration that I'm certainly glad to maintain that grass strip. I'm glad to maintain the sidewalk as far as keeping it clean after I mow the grass. The ADA ramp would would not exit onto the sidewalk. The way it's designed right now, it exits onto the driveway. Now, it could be rotated. Instead of coming east, it could go to the west. And going to the west, it would still not be on the sidewalk. There'd still be plenty of room for your 1 inch and 12 pitch on the ramp. And having the flat space at the top of the ramp for the turn. And making it into the building. Now, the only change that would be to the building would be a sidewalk in the front that has a pattern, a recessed rectangular pattern in the riser. Now, that recessed pattern is what I would like to repeat on the sides of the ramp where it could be seen. Now, the concrete steps that are there are certainly not original with the building. That day, the building would have had hunks of limestone out front for steps. It would have had a limestone walk out there. In the 1840s, 50s, they weren't pouring concrete here in the United States in those days, not that I'm aware of. So I'm guessing that this sidewalk is approximately 1900, and it may be at the same time as the concrete block were put underneath the perimeter of the building. Here we had a company called Pendleton Block, and it made some of the finest concrete block that I've ever seen. Unfortunately, I don't think they made these block. And so I've done some repairs to some of these block, and some of the others will have to be repaired. Now, the way the ADA ramp is shown in the literature that you have, the direction of the sidewalk doesn't have much effect on the building because it's down fairly low. And when it exits the porch area, it would be cutting through what's the top step of the steps going up to the porch. Now, the top step and all the other steps, as I mentioned, are in unsafe condition at this time. And so they will have to be replaced one way or another, whether it's with a ramp or this. But I would think that for access to this building, having a ramp go up there would be far superior to having steps. My opinion is that ramps are much safer than steps. And maybe Kevin could weigh in on that because he has far more experience than anybody else in this room that I'm aware of with.
It's legal to ask people to go in by ramp. There's no question about it.
That's why
It's legal to allow people to go in, walk in on a ramp. It's fine.
and I'm concerned about the safety though.
Bob, this is an interesting conversation we're having, but let's get back to the point. Esther, can you have a business there without a drive-through?
Yes.
Because
it
the
does
ramp,
change
the
my
patio, all that
business
stuff,
model.
none of it matters if you're not going to go forward with your business,
Right,
if you can't have a drive-through.
and that's something we'd have to discuss. I think it would change some, what we would agree on.
There's a chance it would change our agreement there and that may put an end to it. I'm not sure.
We haven't mentioned that the sidewalk on the block regularly, which is, especially for ADA access.
That could be worked around, though. As you mentioned, ADA access could be from the patio side. You've got plenty of parking room back there, Bob, where handicap cars can park back behind there and access from the patio. But if you're not gonna have a business, this whole conversation is moot. So let's decide if we're gonna have a business before we take this any farther about ramps and what the place is gonna look like.
Well, this would be something we'd have to discuss in person.
I think you should do that.
We have broached that and we've not come to any conclusion. We've just discussed possibilities because both of us felt that the drive-through would be a safe thing to have here in Pendleton with it exiting out on Pendleton Avenue because you exit out on Pendleton Avenue, you have a stoplight that's gonna control the traffic from one direction and give you a break in the traffic that would allow you to get out. And so to me, that's another benefit to having an exit on Pendleton Avenue.
Bob, I'm all for this, Bob, and I want you to have a coffee shop there. I was even keen on the drive-through. But I see, as we talked about the last meeting, I see real problems with what Kevin talked about, the queuing, the traffic. You can make that parking lot a one-way parking lot all you want. People are still gonna pull into it off the Pendleton Avenue. They're not gonna pay attention to one-way signs. You're gonna have people leaving the coffee shop and other people pulling in for Perkies. It's an untenable situation.
Plus you have two private residents there too. You have the
Well, true.
Turkeys and you have the apartment building right there, right behind the coffee shop. That's private residents.
I tend to, as much as I wish you could have your drive-through, I agree with the town that the drive-through is untenable. Please have a coffee shop there, but I don't see the drive-through working.
I'm not sure what your point was about the building next door having tenants upstairs.
There, Perky's has tenants that live upstairs, or someone lives upstairs.
The owner of the building lives there, the
The
family.
apartment building right behind the coffee shop, someone lives up there too, in that apartment building, because I see cars parked there. And I know someone living up there, so I see
You're talking about,
the yellow apartment building right behind the
The
coffee
one you,
shop.
it's on the same property. That's it.
Your house, back here, Bob.
oh, okay, yes, my daughter lives upstairs there. I use the downstairs as a workshop area. Another thing that I'm unclear about is in when you emailed me, it said something about having a circle around the building. Is that correct?
That was something that maybe could have been done as the drive-through. It would require some specs to see if there would be any possibility of that with the clearance from the back of the coffee shop to the yellow apartment building. And also if that would be feasible with future use.
Yellow building is 110.5 West High Street. And there's a little more than 12 feet from the gutter at 110 to the balcony at 110.5. And to make that turn at, when you, I don't know if I can see the picture that I pointed out, that if you pull up to where the proposed drive-through window is and try to make a left turn there, you do it on a bicycle, I might do it on a motorcycle, but I think it'd be extremely difficult to do that with any other type of vehicle.
Yeah, that was kind of the only other drive-through as the type of thing that could be looked at. I guess that's really not very feasible anyway, so.
No, that's a real difficult turn to make there. And then that two parking places there are what Esther would have for she and employees. And then there would be a ramp, another ramp that would go from their parking area so they could carry their product up onto the patio and into the west facing door on the patio area.
Paul's Perk doesn't have a drive-through. They're successful. Depends on what
Competitive edge.
Hmm?
Competitive edge.
Well, it depends on what kind of, I mean, you've got a really interesting product that's unique. Whatever clientele might be, like seek that out, I don't know, but it's, available. I am afraid that like big use at Starbucks and everything else, I mean, they are a huge percentage of the businesses that morning and afternoon coffee runs. They buy a bunch of them at one time, back to the office. That's not, I didn't think that's who you were really expecting to be or the first coffee people, Fallsburg people, just more of a hangout.
So should we vote on this?
So are we voting on everything?
Oh, well, I'm assuming we're going to vote on I'm assuming on the drive-through. Is that the most important issue we have here?
You can vote to accept the staff's recommendation
Right.
as shown in the presentation, and it just kind of includes everything listed in our staff findings.
So do we have a motion to just basically vote on staff recommendations?
Make a motion to staff recommendations for the drive-through.
I'll second. All right.
I can summarize what those are then.
Yeah.
So to deny the drive-through use, we consider the alteration of the ADA ramp. And then the staff would potentially approve it. To so the applicant will get a sign permit and will make sure that those signs are up to our town regulations, which might include just a reduction in size.
Mhm.
Yeah, with a recognition that the use to a coffee shop is not part of this petition, that it is permitted by right. So we're not at all voting on the use as a coffee shop or a small retail shop. Yeah, and so that's the recommendation, is to deny the drive-through use and require an altered ADA plan.
All in favor?
Aye.
So one point of clarification then, is if the two property owners, since Solutions for eBiz only owns a few square feet of this, two property owners decide to make this a one-way drive-through, something that we can do, is that a question for the attorney? Or?
You can regulate the parking lot with signs, but I don't know if they don't accept the drive-through, I don't know.
No, I'm not talking about the drive-through. I'm
They're
talking
just
about the
making it a
parking
one-way
lot.
thoroughfare.
Yeah, you can, it's your parking lot, and if you guys agree, you can regulate it with signs, but yeah. I think it is just a parking lot, right? It's not an alley.
Those signs would not be enforceable.
It'd be-
A strong
Yes.
suggestion.
Okay.
Did we get a response back from him?
Yes, that was his answer.
New business?
And it's more of just a notification. Ms. Hello, must have misunderstood the time or was unable to attend tonight. On Friday, on my way into work, I noticed that the door on the side of 101 State, which is really here on Pendleton Avenue side, was replacing a door into the building, and it was an original door. So I've got a couple of pictures. What the original door looked like compared to what the new door looks like. The original door was nailed shut. Basically, I think it might have even been drywalled over or something inside. It was missing some hardware. Anyway, just to give you an update, I've said, hey, temporarily, this is okay just to like shut up the entrance, but I would like to talk to him more about that here over the course of the next month and see if we can find a door that is more is similar to the original, or if we can repair the original even or alter it to work with that opening.
Did he say it? Did he say?
Yes, he does have it inside.
That's the best option.
And that might be something our historic facade grant might be able to help them with the PFIs.
Sure.
For door repair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we may have to suggest that to him.
Yeah.
Yes, I on Friday, I actually sent an email stating that and told him that I talked to the millwork folks who did some of the facade grant stuff, Madison Millwork. I called them and kind of gave them a heads up that, hey, I think I've got a local business owner who needs a little help with this. And kind of gave their information to Catella as well.
104 is not part of his property, or his space.
It is as well.
It's got a funky door on it.
I know, this building it doesn't have the best doors everywhere. This was
Yeah.
like one of the original.
I thought he was gonna try and replace the one in the corner.
So he is aware that he can apply for the facade grant. That's good.
I have a question about that. Did the original door, is it hinged to open in or out?
And that was another concern.
So it'd be fairly simple, just turn the hinges around, put a little slot on the side of the door and have the door open out right where it was.
Yeah, that would have been, acceptable as well. The contractors seemed to think that it wasn't repairable. Not up to you to decide that one. Bob, if you want to stop by and talk to him about that, I'm sure he'd appreciate your input on
I
it as
tried.
well.
My Italian's not very good. I
That's your
tried.
magic wood putty.
I certainly enjoy his cooking though. What about the panel above the door? What's that? Oh, there was something
Yeah,
added.
it looks like
above
there's
the
a
door.
panel above there already.
Yeah, I think that's original.
Yeah.
There's some, look like new wood up there.
They did remove like the whole door casement. And they had to block it up somehow. So temporarily, I said, until you guys get COA approval, maybe don't work on this anymore. So they've done the bare minimum to just close the hole. But I would like to work on them to get a solution.
I was called by the Owenses about that one weekend and I had noticed it and I stopped and took another look to see if it's interesting. I'm glad you brought it.
There's a big difference from the other board. Anyway, I don't want to bother you guys with this anymore since Catella's not here tonight. So.
Oh, that's fine.
It does bring up the question of how much education are we doing? Some people don't do these things without claiming ignorance.
He can't claim ignorance because he'd asked me to bid the job. And I never saw any drawings that were biddable. And I mentioned those doors to him, as well as the door that's on the front. And the door on the front still needs to be rebuilt properly for the facade grant. It was not handled very well, facade grant period there.
It's Jeff Grant here. It's hard. Well, should we continue?
We continue, yeah. So,
It's the end of our presentation.
The only thing I wanted to bring up for possibly next meeting was to talk about COAs.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I just want to schedule that in for me.
Any inputs on the side grant?
So Dr. Lau, is that why you're here? Facade grant?
I submitted a paper and they want more information and I got some estimate for the windows and then the can gonna go look at it and give me an estimate on that too.
All right, anything else? For all that? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, second.
All in favor? All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Did you have someone come out and look at the awning?
Well, yeah. Well, Ken is on it. Yeah. I mean,